My name is Guido Schmidt-Traub. I'm the Executive Director of the Sustainable Development Solutions Network based in Paris. The MDGs have contributed a lot in the fight against extreme poverty, particularly on the social side, but they haven't done quite as well on the environment side. And I think that's in part due to the way in which the environment goal was framed. And I think the post-2015 agenda can learn three important lessons. One is we need to try and be as operational as possible when it comes to specifying environmental objectives. I'm thinking in particular about the integration of environmental concerns into the other areas, agriculture, cities, urban development, and infrastructure come to mind in particular. But we also probably need more and better targets on access to basic infrastructure services. On the second level, there are a number of new themes that need to be brought into the discussion that weren't part of the MDGs. Chief among them is probably climate change. There are other global planetary boundaries, the nitrogen cycle, the phosphorus cycle, that are becoming constraints on development. We need to be quite smart about how to address them because they are politically complex and could jeopardize the entire agenda, but they need to be part and parcel of the new generation of goals. Third, we need to think more clearly and in more operational terms about how the private sector can be part of this agenda. The private sector has many of the solutions to address environmental issues, but it also is at the heart of many of the environmental challenges that we face. And if the post-2015 goals do not spell out a clear role for the private sector and how the goals might apply to the private sector, I think we'll be missing an important part of the agenda.
I'm Dr. Cynthia Rosenzweig. I'm a research scientist at the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies, which is located in New York City. My answer is about enablers of sustainability. And the enablers are cities. Cities, in particular, in regard to climate change, are emerging as the first responders. City leaders are signing pledges to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and at the same time are working to protect their citizens from increasing heat waves, heavy downpours, and for coastal cities, sea level rise. What we're finding is that cities are the right level of governance to deal with sustainability. That because the city leaders and the citizens in the neighborhoods see each other on a day in and day out basis, there can be a very practical level of action to reduce greenhouse gases in transportation systems in cities, in the manufacturing, their activities there, and in the heating and electricity systems or cooling systems of people's homes and workplaces. That's on the mitigation or reduction of greenhouse gas side. At the same time, especially coastal cities, but cities also on rivers and lakes, that they are also doing what is needed to respond to increasing climate risks. And just to finish up, a tremendous example is right here in New York and the response to Hurricane Sandy of last year. We are here in New York actively taking the risks of climate change into account in the rebuilding and the recovery. This is truly a pathway to sustainability.
My name is Simon Zadek. I'm a senior fellow at the International Institute for Sustainable Development and the Global Green Growth Institute, and a visiting scholar at Tsinghua School of Economics and Management. And as an economist, when I think about barriers and enablers, I tend to think about incentives and who's doing what in what way as a result of what's in their interest. moving towards sustainability, environmental sustainability, first and foremost needs some deeply rooted changes in the way our financial markets work. Short-termism across global financial markets delivers trading activity that isn't consistent with the long-term investment we need to create a sustainable economy that will ensure environmental sustainability. The financial market reform process going on as we speak across the world is almost completely unconscious of the broader sustainability agenda, and that needs to change. In the real economy, incentives also are deeply perverse in many respects. Most obviously, carbon subsidies, fossil fuel subsidies, natural resource subsidies ranging from water to coal amount to anything between $1 and $2 or $3 trillion a year, and need to be mitigated if we want to create an economy that delivers what we really need going forward. Thank you.
I'm Sunita Narayan, and I work at the Center for Science and Environment in Delhi. As far as the barrier is concerned, I think the biggest barrier today that we really need to fix is the level of distrust between the already rich countries and the industrializing countries. It's very clear when we came to Rio this time that the world has moved far ahead in understanding the challenge of climate change. But yet action is extremely poor, is inadequate. And that is really what I believe the biggest challenge today is, the fact that we cannot get rich countries, the already rich, to understand that they need to act fast, and that developing countries cannot have the same pathway of growth. The only enabler that I see working in the world is people's action, their concern for environment growing. And that is pushing governments to take action. That's the big game changer.
Hi, my name is Pavan Sukhdev. I'm the United Nations Environment Programme's Goodwill Ambassador. At present, I'm a visiting fellow at Yale, where I'm speaking with you now. The Millennium Development Goals worked in part because we were able to set quantitative targets for the MDGs. The quantitative targets set people's focus and minds clearly in a direction. And I think the visible effects are there for all to see. The challenge, of course, is now moving away from just solving for poverty to solving for development. And in that, correspondingly, we need goals to be set. The challenge, therefore, is one of finding out what we will measure. And in fact, when we dig into this, we find that there are broadly two axes which do need to be measured. One is about human development, which is a combination of health and education and per capita incomes, as is measured by the UNDP's Human Development Index, the HDI. And the second dimension of measurement is the ecological footprint, which is the average amount of land and nearshore sea that the average person uses in her life. We need to manage the ecological footprint below the Earth's biocapacity, which, by the way, has been declining since 1992 to 2012. It's gone down from 3 global hectares to less than 2 global hectares per person. And at the same time, maybe if you think about it in two axes, we need to manage the human development so that countries move towards the area where HDI is greater than 0.8 on a scale of up to 1. The challenge, of course, today is that most of the developing world does have a low ecological footprint, but they don't have the right amount of human development. So what we need is, in fact, two different and parallel strategies, common but differentiated responsibilities, one for the developing world, which is to maintain development, but do so in a way that keeps it green, that keeps the average footprint per capita less than 2 global hectares. And secondly, we need the developed world to focus hard on energy and resource efficiency to reduce its per capita ecological footprint, whilst, of course, maintaining its current levels of human development. By doing so, following differentiated strategies but with a common goal, we can achieve sustainable development, and we will only be able to do that if we start measuring what we manage.
My name is Sarah Wykes, and I am the lead policy analyst for climate and environment for CAFOD, which is the Catholic Agency for Overseas Development based in the UK. And we work with partners living in acute poverty in around 40 countries worldwide. We think that some of the main challenges to development, and particularly to any post-2015 development framework, is to ensure that it really delivers for people living in acute poverty. And we think that the key issues here are how to manage environmental degradation and climate change, which obviously is affecting poor people very hard, and which they have fewest resources to cope with. So we think that progress on MDG 7 on environmental sustainability has not got us very far, and that we really need to address this gap in any future development framework. In particular, we think that any future development framework needs to ensure that people living in acute poverty have access to secure and sustainable sources of water, food and energy. And it needs to make sure that climate change adaptation planning is integrated into development planning at the international and national level, and that it focuses on meeting the needs of people living in acute poverty and the most vulnerable communities.